Hi, my name is Steve Bertino. I'm currently the Director of Operations at the Rochester Institute of Technology. This presentation was originally presented face-to-face as part of EDUCAUSE Conference 2015. The scope of this session is really to consider the disruptive changes underway right now in higher ed, consider the landscape of technologies and technology services available to us as infrastructure service providers, and consider what the implications of those are on what we do now and going into the future. Specifically, what does it mean to us as leaders, our strategic planning, and the skill sets required of our staff in the future. The more specific objectives of today's session are to take a look at both what's going on in the higher ed sector in general, what's going on in the technology landscape, and to consider the effects of these on how we deliver our technology services to our institutions. When you take a look at what's going on in higher ed in general, there's increasing financial pressures, and there's fewer students, and there's higher expectations of those students, both in terms of the curriculum they consume, how much it costs, how and when it's delivered. In terms of the technology, we have now a plethora of services available to us on demand. So how do we package those services and delivery of what we do on behalf of our institutions? So as we're doing our forward planning as IT leaders, we have to consider all of these factors as we develop our strategies going forward. So at the end of this session today, if we just walk away from here with more awareness around the impact of these influencers on us and how we deliver our services on behalf of our institutions. Because we really need to position ourselves now in a strategic fashion so we position ourselves for success and position and enable our institutions to be able to change and meet the demands of the future consumer. This is an interesting graph in that it tells the story of what's going on with student financial debt. 2015, the average undergraduate financial burden at time of graduation is just north of $35,000. And given this is an average, we know that there's plenty of examples where it's way higher than this. So it's fairly intuitive to realize that this model can't be sustained. Something is going to have to give, and it's already giving, and we see the signs of it all over now. And we're feeling the pressures of it more and more every year. You don't really have to look far to find the headlines about what's going on in higher ed relative to the financial impacts. In 2015 through 2017, the forecast is for college closures to average 15 a year, with consolidations doubling. Now, just for consideration and reference, prior 10 years, the average number of colleges that closed in a year was 5, with much fewer consolidations. So the writing's on the wall. And for us, what we need to do is figure out, what does this mean? Our institutions are kind of in the throes of trying to figure this out strategically. And what do we do as IT providers? How do we remain relevant? How do we enable our institutions to respond to the changing environment? What is our best course of action? So it's not about the action we take. We're all really good at taking action. It's where does that action lead us? What is the outcome of that action that makes the difference? Clearly, the action that these little fellows are taking is not the action that we want. So maybe it's time to stop, pause, think about, and maybe listen to some of the other voices in the crowd. This quote really resonated with me when I was developing this part of the presentation. And failure is not fatal, but the failure to change certainly will be. And I actually believe that failure is critical to success, because it's through our failures that we learn what we need to do differently. So the quickest way to succeed is to fail fast, recover, and move forward. But to continue to do the same thing, expect a different outcome, is not how we're going to succeed. So take a look back at the recent technology environment. Back in the 50s and 60s, it was primarily mainframe environments everywhere. And when a lot of us started our careers, we were still working in legacy mainframe type environments. Now the process and procedures we used to manage these environments were, for the most part, very mature, very well practiced, predictable. As we shifted into the 70s and 80s with the client-server architecture, most of this process and procedure still applied and still worked pretty well in this environment. Now in the 90s, with the expansion of bandwidth, the playing field starts to fundamentally change. As companies and entrepreneurs begin to realize that they can move technology services to more consumers more readily, things really started to change for IT operations shops. And now we're really in a revolution in technology services. If you consider what's going on today, we've moved in the last 10 years to an almost fully on-demand type of technology environment. Consumers are demanding almost anything at the click of a mouse. So what we used to do in terms of managing and delivery of these services has changed fundamentally now. And so the question for us is, the way we used to do it, the way we still continue to apply those practices to the new technologies, are we really taking full advantage of the capability? Are we really able to consume and deliver these services in a way that allows us to maximize the benefit of what's available to us? So the question for us, when we're looking at what we do in terms of service delivery, are we really keeping pace? As we consider some of the other major influences in the technology services, we now have hundreds of companies in the US alone that are offering cloud services, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service. And these companies do this now in a quality, affordable fashion. And the forecast is for these services to continue to double over the next few years. So as we consider how we deliver our services, we need to consider this in our planning, because most likely, if not already, most of us will be delivering some set of, if not all of our services through a hosted or partnered arrangement. So this has an impact on how we go about doing our business as well. Another context in which we can consider this, which seemed to really help me think about this as I was trying to figure out my strategic plan going forward. It's really the Gartner operational maturity model, and probably everybody here is pretty familiar with this and probably been measured against it at least once in your career if you've been in this business for a while. And the last time I went through an assessment of our shop relative to this maturity model was probably 6 to 7 years ago, and the net of that was we were probably in that 3-level maturity, and to go into the next levels of maturity required far too much customization and investment to realize those benefits. So it wasn't really cost efficient to move any further in this. The overhead incurred with all that customization became an additional maintenance burden as well. But with the technologies that we have readily available to us today, with what we buy, you get much of this capability off the shelf. The ability to be proactive in terms of managing compute resources, responding and provisioning on demand, being proactive in monitoring and detecting looming faults in the environment, and taking automated action to remediate those before there's issues in many cases, or if not, remediation in a very limited time frame. So it's barely even noticeable to the user of the service. So with this kind of capability, our overall maintenance overhead in terms of what we used to do with the heavy maintenance of patching and upgrading and building is all being done in a very automated fashion now. So what does that do? That frees up work cycles of our people. And what we ought to be doing is thinking about how to best leverage those added work cycles and aiming those people at higher value efforts for our institution. Because that's where we derive our real value, both as service providers and our institution. It's being able to couple our smart resources with our partners on the business and academic side in delivering technology solutions in a way that yield higher value for the institutions going forward. And our strategies, as we build them, have to either be focused on getting us to this place where we can realize this capability from our people with the opportunity, or if we're already there, figuring out a way to fully leverage those additional work cycles that people have. Now we really get to the crux of this presentation. And it really is asking the question, what does all of this mean for the future of our employees? What is the skill sets that we're going to require of our employees in the future? I propose that it fundamentally changes over what it has been and what, to a large extent, remains today. We're going to require a whole new set of skills in our people going forward to take best advantage of the way that the technology and the services are delivered to us today, and how we, in turn, package those into solutions for our institutions. It's pretty safe to say what won't work in the future.
Do you want me to save your game of Minesweeper here?
No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, instead of playing a game, God forbid we read the manual.
Hey, I'm on the internet at home.
Let me guess. You're on AOL?
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing except it doesn't understand JavaScript.
So what might a future IT, central IT organization look like in the future? So when I think about this, today we're still largely organized around that traditional legacy hierarchical kind of organization where you got your C-level IT person, you got your line of technical managers, and then you've got a mix of individual contributor skill sets underneath the technical managers. Moving forward, though, with a change in skill set and the ability for our teams to operate fast and with far more flexibility, I think the configuration of an organization may look more like this. Where you've got an IT leader with a relatively small team of skill sets wrapped around him or her. The skill sets I envision to be a mix of, kind of your traditional engineers, because we're always going to have to do engineering at some level. You have your solution architects. I think this is really important. As we begin to architect solutions now and in the future, we're really thinking about architecting and bringing together technology services that may be a mix of existing legacy, new on-prem construction, and a number of outsourced services integrated into one technology solution. And in that kind of an environment, you really also need this relationship manager, business type role or skill set on your team. If we can organize ourselves like this, focused on business disciplines or subject practices, and most importantly, these teams are not only staffed with the right skill set, but empowered to deliver what they're chartered to deliver with a lot of latitude in decision making and delivery. When we get to this point, this is where I think we become fast and flexible in a way that allows us to not only respond quickly to demand, but to be able to be proactive and get ahead of that and offer opportunities to our institutions. when we think about re-engineering ourselves in this kind of a way, what are the barriers? What are the constraints? Well, the first one is us. We all tend to want to cling to what we know and what we do because it's in that place that we feel we add the most value. So we really need to think about and be aware of our predispositions to do this. Because even in our planning, we want to do this. We want to do more of the same because we know it, we feel comfortable with it, we feel confident with it. In addition to that, it takes time, energy, and money to change. And it takes an awareness of the type of change that we're facing. For many of us, this type of re-engineering in our IT organizations is fundamentally a cultural change, which is the most difficult change to deliver in any institution. Because it's not a change that you set some direction at the senior level and people march off and go about changing. It really happens over years of time with sustained commitment from leadership, managers, individuals to change their thinking about how they do business. So our challenge is really to constantly be aware of our tendency for the status quo. Because if we're not, and we don't do this, we essentially become keepers of the legacy. And this is not where we're going to succeed. This is not where we're going to survive, actually, because if we continue to do what we're doing now without change, it's only a matter of time before it becomes apparent to our institutions that the services we offer no longer meet the demand or cost too much. So when we've gotten ourselves in the position where we're taking full advantage of the technologies available to us and we're leveraging the proactive capabilities of those technologies, we can now start to free up time for our people to do more innovative and higher value efforts in partnership with their institutions. It's in this space where employees are investing themselves to provide solutions that not only provide higher value to the institution, but to them as individuals and professionals. This is the space that we strive to get to. I would like to share with you a story that I believe is a good example of when IT individuals partner with their business or academic partners in delivery of solutions that advance the institution. In this particular example, a faculty member in our College of Computing Sciences, specifically the security program, partnered with one of our cloud engineers, and they came up with a plan to put together a regional penetration test where you have a number of schools competing in this security test. And the advantage of this is through partnering with our primary vendors and service providers, we're able to kind of put this together in a very low cost configuration and deliver the infrastructure services on behalf of our central IT group for this competition. So rather than me try and tell this story, I had the individual, the lead engineer from our staff and the faculty member talk about this because I think they do a far better job sharing what this means to the institution and to them.
The relationship over the last 8 years between the academic IT groups and central IT groups was very rocky at first. The decentral IT groups wanted complete control and didn't trust the delivery of service from central IT.
There was a little bit of reticence on the side of the faculty to release the ownership of all this hardware, partly because there was some fear that if we lost the hardware, that the labs would then become general purpose labs and we would lose physical space to the Institute.
It took years just to prove that we could deliver a service as a value add. And very quickly, it became evident that we could work together.
The ITS group is becoming more of a partner and less of an adversary, and advancing the cause for both the infrastructure for the institute as well as the content that the faculty are presenting.
Bill Stackpole talked to me about their penetration testing competition, and there was some concern about support as far as hardware. Do we have enough hardware to actually run the competition? There was concerns about staffing, involvement. Are we going to be available 24 hours a day for a couple days? There was also concerns about backup plans. Is there any type of DR, solution?
At this point, the competition is run on the RIT Academic Cloud. Every team is going to get an isolated infrastructure. There are going to be snapshots that are periodically taken of the infrastructure. So we're looking at a 1-hour recovery time for about an 8-hour competition, which makes me feel warm, fuzzy, and comfortable. And that's really the relationship you want to have with your ITS administrators and people who work in the computing infrastructure that support you. I believe that these companies that are coming to RIT to watch this event are going to see the ITS infrastructure that we've built, and it's going to give RIT an opportunity to talk to some of the vendors who might donate to the university, who might partner with the university on projects to advance the cause of computing, who might give us some insight into things that we are doing that they're doing differently. I see this as symbiotic, as a collaborative opportunity for some of the companies, some of the people who hire our students. And the goal has been to put physical equipment in the students' hands to give them an opportunity to build, test, and troubleshoot.
The students come in as freshmen and they have, skill, but they also have drive to create new service. That was, impressive to see students coming in and rolling out new production services in a month, 2-month period of time.
This is absolutely a win-win. I can't see any way that this is not going to add value to the ITS group, to the faculty, to the institute, to our college, and I think most importantly to our students.
I also asked our CIO, Jean Caceres, to share her vision for the future of Central IT and specifically what it means to the staff and her expectations of us in IT in the next 5 to 10 years.
Central IT has to be able to deploy reliable, secure, cost-effective, and consistent services and be able to do what's right for our students, our faculty, and our staff. We have to build trust. We have to become reliable partners. I think we will be change agents as we move forward to establish more common services. I think it's important that Central IT work very closely with our partners or other IT partners on campus and really build capacity by provisioning common services together, create technology roadmaps together for the entire campus. Over the last dozen years, the automation in technology has freed up our people to be able to do bigger and greater things, to increase their value proposition to their institutions. So for example, here at RIT, there's a lot we have put into place to be able to facilitate that. First and foremost, our RIT strategic plan for 2025 really puts the focus on innovation and greatness through difference, taking multiple types of thoughts, skill sets, and bringing them together to create a new future for our students. That RIT strategic plan sets the endpoint for where we want to go as an institution. How we will get there is through that type of innovation of our staff, and especially our IT staff. So the profile of our employees is also being challenged. Today's employees in IT on a college campus are the best and the brightest. We need to find employees that not only have the central vertical component of their skills, the technology, the critical thinking, the being able to build things, but also the horizontal shift of skills, collaboration, communication, effective documentation of information, being able to influence their peers. The vertical and the horizontal together makes that T-shaped employee. And that T-shaped employee is critical to the success of IT, whether you're in higher ed or in industry. I think you'll also see higher ed IT employees play multiple roles. No longer will you be the single technologist in one specific technical domain. We have to be savvied with our vendors and our partners and contracts and distributed services. We have to be able to reach across within our own organizations and figure out how do we blend across within IT, not just in our technical domain. And that is a different skill set. So that T-shaped employee is critical to our future. We have implemented in our own IT organization a practice of time, where we provide 2 hours every week, Friday mornings from 10 to noon, for all of our IT employees to work on something they want to work on, so that our employees can deep dive into something that's of interest to them, and out of that we believe will spark innovation, will spark ideas, and it sparks partnerships in IT and across the campus. We've implemented a student IT office, and by doing that we provide this experiential learning for our students, but in the same way they are the voice of the customer, and that's been another way to push IT. They come back and push our standards, they push on our requirements, they push on our limitations, and that's been invaluable to kind of open up new and better ways to provide these services.
So considering all these factors, our challenge as IT leaders is to really make sure we fully understand what's going on in the higher ed sector. Be well versed in the technology landscape and the technology services available to us. Make sure we're considering all options available so that as we're designing our solutions, we're taking full advantage of the capabilities that are available to us. Make sure that we're developing the right skill set in our people. The lead time on this is not measured in months, but rather in years when you consider a full organization or department. So get a head start on that now. Make sure that we are organizing ourselves in a fashion that our folks are empowered, they're focused, and they're enabled to do the job that we're asking them to do. So by maximizing our talent, really turn these people loose to be the innovators for your institution. Let them take the lead on driving new outcomes on behalf of the institution.